Global Chamber, and we're kicking off our new business opportunities in Latin America. We're very honored and happy to have experts from all across Latin America here with us today. Two from Mexico. We've got Yolany from Panama. Cesar is calling in from Peru. We have Norris coming in from Costa Rica, and the famous Ricardo Banea in Buenos Aires, Argentina, will clean up and wrap everything up around these opportunities. This is for exporters and importers looking to grow in the region, and really today our goal is to understand what are the opportunities in 2018, what are some key things, and what are these experts finding that might be opportunities for you. If you're a member of Global Chamber and you find some things during this conversation that are of interest to you, reach out to me, Doug Brunke, at doug@globalchamber.org, and let me know, and we'll work to get you connected to that. Our first speaker is calling in from Mexico City. Jose Luis Romero Hicks is the managing partner of Romero Hicks and Galindo law firm. He's actually originally from Guanajuato, but today he's in Mexico City. Jose Luis, please kick us off.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Should I just go on?
Yes, please.
Well, let me make a brief description. Mexico now stands at a very desirable 172 country risk. And of course, Mexico has had since the 1980s a very open economy. We have free trade agreements with over 45 countries in the world through 12 treaties. And of course, we are members of NAFTA and are joining TPP. Now today, I would like to concentrate on a central state of Mexico. Its name is Guanajuato, and it's landlocked, just like Bolivia is in Latin America. And it is a state that I think will be very interesting for investors. We'll be looking at, of course, a national policy framework that is appropriate for taking important risks. And I think that Mexico stands as a general policy democratic country. Now, in terms of the major economic determinants that Guanajuato has to offer for the Global Chamber audience, let me say that Guanajuato is a state. Mexico has 32 states of its union. And Guanajuato has a population of 5.9 million people. It has roughly the same population as Denmark. Now, in terms of local markets and the size, Guanajuato state has an interesting size. It has $52 billion in GDP. With about $21.5 billion in exports. These exports have been growing at a rate of over 225% in the last decade, which shows the strength of this economic zone in the heart of Mexico. These $52 billion that Guanajuato state represent are about the economic size of Bulgaria and Uruguay. And it's twice the size of Paraguay, Salvador, and Uganda, or 3 times larger than Nicaragua, Jamaica, or Bosnia-Herzegovina. If Guanajuato were to be a country, it would be the world's 82nd largest country out of a UN list of 194. Now, for the local markets, let me go into the economic determinants. If you look at Guanajuato state in the heart of Mexico, and you draw a line about 400 kilometers in its size, you will find 60% of Mexico's population, 70% of Mexico's industry, including automotive industry, 70% of all foreign trade that Mexico has, and 80% of Mexico's markets. Guanajuato state, although landlocked, has an interesting one-day rule. It's one-day trucking to the U.S. border, one-day trucking to the Pacific and Atlantic ports. Since Mexico is right in the middle, since Guanajuato is right in the middle of Mexico, there are 2 important highways that cross that make connectiveness and also train communication interesting. Highways called 45 and 57 cross through Guanajuato. In terms of air transportation, I think it's interesting to know that within this region, there are 3 important airports. One in Querétaro, which is a city about 150 kilometers from central Guanajuato. and the other one is Morelia, but also the regional international airport is called Bajío Airport, and it portrays about 20 daily international flights to 7 different destinations in the United States. In terms of another economic determinant, I would say Guanajuato has an interesting educational system. We are currently having 45 universities and about 77 campuses. We are producing about 5,000 engineers each year. We have 5 technological parks and 28 training centers. So in terms of human capital, in this state of 60 million population, it has interesting and important educational profile. In terms of other investors, we are now having important investments, especially from countries like the US, Canada, Germany, France, Japan, UK, Italy, India, South Korea, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Turkey, Sweden, China, Slovenia, Holland, Spain, Taiwan, Austria, Brazil, and Spain. So as you can see, there's an interesting European, Asian, and American in terms of America as a continent investments in Guanajuato state. Now, if those interested investors are looking for a place to live, let me tell you that Guanajuato offers 2 important cities which are on the list of the World Heritage. One is Guanajuato City itself, and the other one is San Miguel de Allende, which will make life a lot easier. Also, Guanajuato State, in terms of cultural and cosmopolitan life, offers important international events. The Cervantes Festival, which is not held in Spain, is held in Mexico and in Guanajuato. International Balloon Festival, and of course the World Rally that takes place every year in Guanajuato. We have 21,000 permanent residents, foreign residents in the state, and obviously, since we are in the highlands of Mexico, although it sounds very hot, it's not. Temperature ranges between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, in terms of business opportunities, I think that Guanajuato has a large profile of business opportunities. We have technological parks as part of the 28 parks that we have, dealing with food, health, and agriculture, dealing with biomedical, automotive, mechanical, and digital. We have also an energy biotechnology park, and of course, one of the strongest industries is automotive. Guanajuato is one of the strongest automotive strongholds of Mexico. And of course, another investments that are growing, especially in terms of social innovation, education, health, and social economy. Let me stop there and say that Guanajuato offers important economies of scale in terms of agglomeration. It has a friendly environment in terms of business. And the state government, since Mexico is a federal republic, aside from the federal government, has a lot of support in terms of post-investment opportunities.
Good. Thank you very much. One question that's come in, could you be a little bit more specific about some of the industries in 2018 that are both there and growing, and maybe particularly, you mentioned automotive, could you talk a little bit about maybe technology or sustainability or some of the other areas where many of our
software industry is very strong. I would say I would stress agribusiness. I would state software development. Guanajuato is the first chemical producer of Mexico. Auto parts is important. Plastics, conveyors, hoses, tires, laminated crystal, aluminum pipes, those sorts of investments are very important.
Okay, so you're touching on infrastructure then as well. Is there a lot of infrastructure activity there in the state?
Yes, there is. Since we have a strong automotive production, Guanajuato State is now producing about 1 million cars a year, a little bit more than 1 million cars a year. And of course, these have to be delivered mostly to the US markets. We have a very strong infrastructure support, and of course, industrial parks, and a very important train system that will take you basically to the US or any ports in the Gulf or the Pacific.
Okay. I know you've got to go and we've got to wrap up, but one more quick question. And if you can handle this in a quick way, that would be great. NAFTA, you've heard of NAFTA. And we've all heard of NAFTA. Could you kind of leave us with maybe some thoughts in terms of what's going to happen, do you think, in 2018 with NAFTA? Where are we going?
Well, Yes, NAFTA is so important that even though the President of the United States has been very gloom in terms of his opinion, there are 33 states in the United States where Mexico is their main source of exports, and there are many, many states that depend on Mexican imports, especially in the agribusiness. And I think that the interdependence that has been developed with over 23 years of NAFTA will be the proof. Strong lobbies within the U.S. have made it clear. And now we are facing the fifth round of 7 negotiation rounds. And I think the advancements are quite good. I think NAFTA is too strong, and interdependence is so strong that it doesn't make economic sense to think different than what has happened. But there are opportunities to have a more modern NAFTA. I'll just give one example. E-commerce was not there when NAFTA was signed 23 years ago.
Very good. Jose Luis Romero Hicks, thank you so much for taking the time today, and thank you for your support of Global Chamber and Trade. Thank you very much.
Great to be of help, and buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Our next speaker is coming in from Mexico as well, except he's here at our headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona. David Farca runs the International Business Group. He's been very involved with trade between Mexico and the U.S. He's from Mexico City originally, so it's a nice bridge from Jose Luis, who's in Mexico City at the moment, to now Scottsdale, Arizona, to Mexico City born David Farca. He's also helping Global Chamber set up our chapters all across Mexico. David's going to be talking about some of the opportunities there. David, come on over.
Thank you, Doug. Hello, everybody. Thank you for that. A little bit shorter than Doug. I was asked to talk about most of the opportunities that are available in Mexico. And there's 2 ways to go about it. I think the most practical one are maybe the unique aspects that most people don't talk about. I go to a lot of conferences that have to do with cross-border trade, and you always hear the same things coming up. And I'll mention those just to be true to the line of thinking of opportunities in Mexico, but I won't go deep into those because that information is very readily available. And when you talk about opportunities, first of all, you got to think of Mexico, and this is stats that you hear all over, 15th largest economy in the world. Some people say that it's the 11th if you consider purchasing power parity. And it's poised to be number 5th by 2050. So it's a great consumer market, and at the same time, a great labor force. Average age of Mexican citizens is way below the U.S. It's around 27 years. So it's a great labor force that's coming into place, which creates a lot of opportunities. Most of the opportunities that you'll see and you'll hear about in Mexico obviously starts with energy. A lot of regulations changed during the government of President Peña Nieto. When he started office, there was a lot of deregulation in the energy industry, and a lot of opportunities were created, from exploration to refinery to even production of clean energy. When you talk about solar, you talk about wind, and even some companies in Arizona have taken advantage of that. There's currently a work in progress between Tucson Electric and the state of Sonora to put transmission lines and sell energy directly produced in the U.S. to Mexico. So a lot of times it's not tangible products that cross the border, but it's those type of things that create great opportunities in the market. There's also, you also hear a lot about biotech happening in Mexico. Mexico is graduating more engineers with 110 million in population than the U.S. with 300 and some million in population. So it's very highly educated. The workforce is highly skilled. It's not the low-income labor jobs that you saw before. Now it's a very highly skilled, trained workforce. And you also see a clear example of that. A company here in Arizona by the name of Tiempo Development. They develop software products for a lot of different customers across North America, and they have offices in Hermosillo, Monterrey, and I think they recently opened Guadalajara. So a lot of their engineers are being hired down there to be able to produce all the software that they're required. Advanced manufacturing is also something that has grown significantly. And of course, we got to mention aerospace within that. There's a lot of components in aerospace that are manufactured in Mexico. All the doors to the 787 from Boeing are manufactured right in Sonora. Bombardier is in Querétaro. So there's a lot of in that industry that's growing. There's 3 basic clusters on that: the Querétaro cluster, the North Baja cluster, and the Sonora cluster are pretty big in aerospace in Mexico. There's about 1,500 aerospace companies just in the Mexicali Baja region. So that's an important cluster in Mexico. And that's mostly what you will hear about in most of the articles I read, the conferences that I attend. Those are the opportunities that you see, but those are opportunities to me that have been there for a while, that people are seizing already, that are happening today. Some of the growing opportunities that I see, for example, it's in healthcare. In the US, there's a big group of baby boomers that are transitioning into retirement, and they're going to need a lot of care in the future. When you talk about assisted living, when you talk about healthcare services, that's a generation that is going to demand a lot of services. And when you look at the availability of a younger population to take care of that older population, the numbers just don't add up in the US. So there has to be some sort of collaboration between both countries. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there. When you look at healthcare costs rising significantly in the US and being extremely affordable in Mexico, there's companies that do assisted care living that are looking into building facilities in Mexico, not for Mexican retirees, but for American retirees going to those facilities in Mexico. That's happening already organically. You see just across the border, there's a small town across San Luis Rio Colorado, town by the name of Algodones, which is known for dentistry. It's known for plastic surgery. It's known for basic healthcare needs that are not urgent, that are not critical in need, but they're flourishing. And there's a lot of Americans that go south of the border to take care of those type of things. When you look at that, you also look at the cost of an insurance company for healthcare needs in the US, and it's exorbitant. If you look at the same cost of treating that patient in Mexico, it's a lot less expensive. So I think there's a good opportunity in the future for insurance companies to provide bilateral insurance, and it's to the benefit of the American-US company to pay a lesser rate to get the same quality or better type of treatments just by going across the border. So I think in the future there's opportunities for healthcare tourism, as it's called, for people going to different parts to take care of their healthcare. When you look at research, the red tape that you have now in some states and in most of the country in the US to do research in certain things, just the hoops you have to jump through to get permits to do that, it's becoming prohibitive. So I think there's a lot of companies that will start doing their R&D in Latin America and provide those results for the North American population. There's a great, I like to call it a jewel that we have here in Arizona, which is called TGen, the Genomics Lab Institute that has done fantastic research in genomics and is now collaborating with a couple of institutes in Mexico to develop certain diagnostic tools through the analysis of genetics. So it's happening now, and I think that's just bound to grow in the future. Another area of opportunity that I see, you've seen in the last decade or two, a lot of franchises going down to Mexico. When I was growing up in Mexico City, it was a big deal when the first McDonald's opened in Mexico City. We used to travel to the U.S. and look forward to going to a McDonald's in the U.S. because there were none in Mexico. So it was a big thing. You go back to Mexico now and you will see them everywhere. It's just like the U.S. Franchising in Mexico has grown significantly, especially in the food industry. You see the majority of the brands, Starbucks, Burger King, a lot of those brands being down there. I think that where the opportunity relies in the future is for more service-oriented brands. Some of those brands are not as successful as they are in the U.S. When you're competing with the taco stand in the street, it's hard to compete price-wise. And when people want to spend a little bit more money, they want a little bit more service. So you look at franchises like Applebee's or Chili's, and they're being extremely successful in Mexico. And now they're even more successful in Mexico than they are in the U.S. Why? Because you have a server that brings your food. It's not as expensive as a high-end restaurant, but it's a little bit above what you look at for a fast food type of franchise. So those type of franchises have been fantastic in Mexico. And I think if you look at the services world for franchising services, that's an area of opportunity that's bound to grow in Mexico. And I'm thinking something like an H&R Block that provides tax services. Franchises like that in Mexico, I think, would be fantastic. When you talk about import and export, again, it's not only about products, it's also about services. And that's something that has been growing and will continue to grow significantly in Mexico. And the last one I want to touch base on, which is an interesting one, it's defense. And the reason I touch base on that is because advanced manufacturing in Mexico is growing significantly. For years, the State Department did not allow defense companies to source some of their parts from international companies unless they were vetted first by the State Department. A couple of years ago, Mexico was given the green light to do that, and that's an area that I don't think has been exploited at all. So there's a huge opportunity there for companies like Raytheon, for companies like Northrop, to really start sourcing their products internationally with that approval from the State Department. So I think that's an area that we haven't heard much about, but it's bound to grow significantly in the future. So I'll leave you with that. You can reach me if you have any questions or you would like additional information through Doug at the Global Chamber. For those people that are here physically, I put my information up there. If you want to follow me or shoot me an email, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. I'll just comment from the side here. I see you've got your Twitter account there, right? David Farca, F-A-R-C-A. So please feel free to contact him. I got a couple comments then, and then we'll segue into our Panama conversation. First of all, thank you to everyone in Lima, Peru, and in San Jose, Costa Rica for hosting events today. I know particularly in Lima, there's quite a large audience or a large group there. And so thank you, Marco, for arranging that and everybody for attending there. All of you, whether you're at a location or whether you're just calling in, please feel free to write a question in your Zoom area, or if you're in the area like here in Scottsdale or in Lima or in San Jose, shake your moderator, wave the moderator down. In Scottsdale, that would be me. I already have a question coming in from the audience that we'll get to, but if you have a question, either handle that with a piece of paper or just raise your hand at the appropriate time. David, that was really good information.
Good.
Thank you very much. So everybody who's speaking will stay on and be available for questions at the end. We have about 30 minutes for questions at the end, except Jose Luis. He's had to leave. I believe he's had to leave. But everybody else, including David, will be here. And so just to stay on track on our timing, I'd like to now switch down to Panama. I think you're in Panama today, Yolany. Yolany Alvarado, she's the founder and CEO of ProPanama. She's an attorney, and she's very involved in investments down there, and she's going to be telling us about the opportunities there. Yolany.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Over here in Panama, it's 10:26 a.m. so it's still good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to have been invited. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to represent Panama in this virtual conference. I would like to get started by saying that Panama as a country is the fastest growing economy in Latin America. We have a rate of 6.5% per year of growth, and that is expected to get wider and larger with the many infrastructure and many things that the government is doing at this moment. In Panama, there is a great business environment. We welcome foreign investors to come, live, and invest in Panama, having a very firm political and economic people in place. We are a very stable country right now, and we have a dollarized economy, meaning that there's no issues regarding currencies or exchange when it comes to bringing in money or taking out the money to the host country or to the foreign country where any company is located. We have, as I told you, a great business environment, and that is being demonstrated by the recently new passed law, which is called the Friendly Nations Law, where foreign investors from 48 countries are welcome to live and invest in Panama and get permanent residency in a period of 6 months. This program has become very, very popular, and the reason for which it has become very popular is because it's very easy to be involved with it. You just need to have a passport from one of these 48 nations. Of course, United States being one of those nations. Mexico is also one of those nations. Canada, and many countries from Europe. The idea is that Panama is offering residency and even a potential opportunity to get a second passport for citizens from nations that are wealthy. So they might bring their wealth and invest it in Panama. In return, the country is providing them permanent residency for the investor, for his family, for his kids, and even for his parents. And after 5 years, those residents can get Panamanian passport and become citizens. From another standpoint of view, Panama has a great location. We are literally in the middle of the world, and that's the reason for which it has become the natural base for many business operations. As an example of that, we have over 125 national headquarters that have made Panama their headquarters specifically because of the location and because of the law that has been issued especially for multinational companies. Any multinational companies that invest over $2 million in the country and hires over 100 plus workers is entitled to be registered as a multinational corporation and get all of the tax breaks and benefits that have been specially issued for this type of industry. Therefore, we have over 125 multinational companies that go from Dramco, Huawei, Procter & Gamble, Sony, and many of them are not only set in special economic areas, but they're also set within the city itself, which creates and allows the ability of workers, regular workers, and not necessarily technicians or specialists to be involved in the operations and the management of these multinational companies. We have special economic areas that have been designed by the government. Some of them are private, some of them are public. The most known one is the Colon Free Zone, which is a public special economic area at the gateways of the Panama Canal, which provides service to all of the vessels that come into Panama, they can discharge the containers and then use the colon-free zone to distribute these commodities all over the Americas. We have a great connectivity as a country by air, by sea, by land. As you may know, we just inaugurated our expanded Panama Canal that allows 1.5 times larger Panamax size vessels. So it has become a great impact on Panama economy. The fact that we have been able to widen and make the Panama Canal even more productive. On the air side, we are right now expanding our international airport, which will allow an approximate of 25 million tourists per year once it's finished. So that will also encounter and will allow a great growth of Panama's economy, making Panama even more connected to the rest of the world. Recently, 2 weeks ago, I was in Punta del Este, Uruguay. We were participating at the China LAC event that was hosted in Uruguay this year. And many of the companies that participated, many of the Chinese companies that participated have indicated that through their new policy of the new Silk Road, they are considering Panama as a very important hub for their companies to come into Latin America. And actually they have considered Panama to be the gateway for China into Latin America and the Caribbean. So in case any one of you is interested in learning a little bit more about the China interest in Latin America, please feel free to contact us to provide you further contacts with Chinese companies or to provide general information on the event. We have also, Panama have a great level of technology. We are now, today itself, later on, I will be meeting with one of the directors of a free trade zone that is looking to get into the data mining business, using Panama as the hub for the Americas for this activity. Panama's great technology and connectivity comes from the fact that 5 major cables go through, submarine cables go through the geographical space of Panama. And it makes us very competitive from the technology and internet-wise. As I said before, Panama has a very stable economy and a very good political environment. We are having elections on 2019. So far, everything has been gotten along in an ordered way. Of course, there are people who are pro. Of course, there are people who might have issues regarding the administration of this government. ProPanama is a private entity, therefore we do not represent the government, nor one side nor the other. And we are happy to be able to indicate that we provide a very unbiased explanation. I think I'm going a little bit longer than I was expected. I'm sorry. Now we'll let you continue with the next speaker, and I will stay by in case there's anyone who has any questions. I would like us to comment on anything that we have just spoken.
Fantastic. Thank you, Yolany. This is Doug Brunke calling in from Scottsdale with David Farca and the group here. I want to thank you for the tropical bird sounds that you supplied during that section. That was particularly exciting. We don't have tropical birds in Scottsdale. They can't survive July and August.
Okay, but that was deliberately done, okay? It was deliberately done. This spot is exclusively for virtual meetings, and that's the idea.
So you have like a sound machine? Is that what you're saying? It's not really a bird.
No, actually it is a bird, but it's the spot is located so we can cheers a little bit of our nature while we're having some business done.
Well, very good. And we do have some questions for you that we'll reserve for the end. In the meantime, we're going to go to Lima, Peru, and Cesar Peñaranda of ProInversion Peru. He'll be talking about an overview of the Peruvian economy for 2018, and he'll be talking specifically about infrastructure investment opportunities in Peru for the private sector. Cesar, are you there?
Yes. Hello. Thanks. Hello. Thanks for the privilege. Thanks the Global Chamber for the opportunity. I'm a representative. I'm the director of investor services at ProInversion. ProInversion, just as an introduction, is the private investment promotion agency in Peru. We basically are in charge of. We have two mandates, basically to promote the sectors, sectoral promotions in every sector, basically, energy, tourism, hydrocarbons, telecommunications, transport. But in particular, we have received the mandate very recently from our board of directors, which is comprised by the ministers, by the main ministers in our country, to promote the PPP pipeline, the private-public partnership pipeline, because these are the ones, the projects that really move the needle in the country. Just as an introduction, Peru is expected to grow at a rate of around 4% the next year, but that's probably low in our standards. We're used to growing at rates of 6 to 7%. So we're very keen on promoting the PPP pipeline that we have, because these are really the projects that move the needle or are going to move the needle in the future. I have a very brief presentation just to give you an idea of what we have at ProInversion as the PPP agency. This is the first slide that I usually use in the roadshows when I talk to investors. And I usually say a phrase that was used by one of our historians here in Peru, a very famous historian called Jorge Basadre. He said that Peru is a land of opportunities, but it's a challenge, but also an opportunities. And this slide kind of subsumes that phrase, because it says that, of course, it's a challenge for us to have an investment infrastructure gap of $160 billion. That's basically 80% of Peru's GDP. But it's a very big opportunity for investors, especially in a country that has incredible economic stability, macroeconomic stability, probably one of the best, not only in Latin America, but in the world, but also treats the investment, the foreign investor, the same way as the national investor. So this is a huge opportunity for investors. Yeah, next. This is the pipeline that we have currently for the end of this year and 2020. We have $21 billion that we want to award in PPPs. Most of it in transport. We have a lot in energy, some in mining, which is basically one project that I'm going to talk about. And we have a lot of water and sanitation also. Just to talk very briefly about some of the projects, we have a couple of metro lines, Metro Line 3 and Metro Line 4, that are probably going to be awarded in 2019. We're talking about approximately $10 billion investment. We have a commuter train that we're going to start formulating at ProInversion with the Ministry of Transport and Communications. A commuter train that it's probably going to be around $5 billion. It's going to be linked to the metro lines, also going to be in the region of Lima. We have, in terms of gas and hydrocarbons, we have a very big project called the massification of gas in Peru, which is basically, it's comprised about giving or diversifying the provision, the supply of gas by trucks virtually or by pipelines to the center and south of Peru. using our huge supply of gas that we have naturally here. And we have a lot of projects in water and sanitation also, especially wastewater treatment plants. We open a window for wastewater treatment plants in the whole country. Actually, we're starting with wastewater treatment plant in Lake Titicaca. This is a $300 million project, and we're going to declare it of interest at the end of this year, or probably the beginning of next year. So basically, those are the main projects that we have. We have 54 projects that we have until 2020 for an amount of around $21 billion. This doesn't account new mandates that we could have in the future, in the next year. We're trying to build a really important pipeline, and the idea is to start awarding projects around in amounts of around 10 billion per year. The idea is to next year award an amount of 5 billion. This is what we have done this year, the accomplishments that we have done. We have basically awarded already. The ones in green are the projects that we have awarded. These are basically 3 transmission lines. We have awarded also an Amazon waterways. This is basically to improve the connectivity in the Amazon basin. There is a port of Salaberry. We're also modernizing a port which is to the north of Lima. We declared this port of interest, and it open to competition, and the winner is going to be known the next year. And then we're going to award at the end of this year 7 broadbands. We have the fiber optics in Peru, but we have to decentralize it. We have 7 regions that are going to have these broadbands. And we have a huge mining project that we're going to award the 20th of December, which is called the Michiquillay project. It's basically copper and molybdenum. We have Goldman Sachs as a transaction advisor in this one. And we're talking about a $2 billion investment at the minimum. These are the accomplishments that we have for this year. I'm going to skip the next 2. Let's go to the next. I'm going to skip the next 2 because I basically talked about the projects. We can skip this one, and this one also. And yes, and this one is okay. Because I basically talk about the main projects, the commuter train, the metro lines. We have a huge pipeline coming, around 21 billion until 2020, like I mentioned. And I wanted to speak a little bit about what we're doing, how we're promoting these projects. This is what we have done just in 3 months or 4 months recently. We have met with companies, top companies. We have had B2Bs, bilaterals, and events all over the world, basically. We have had 131 bilateral meetings with companies for about 800 that have an annual income of around $800 billion. We're talking about 4 Peruvian economies. And we have basically gone all over the world. We started in Mexico, we then went to Asia, China, Japan, Korea, then Spain, and finally in Canada, where we also met with Infrastructure Ontario. It's probably the top PPP agency in the world, and it's going to help us. We made an agreement to help us keep improving our procurement processes in the future. This is the way we're promoting our projects. We want to diversify the platform of potential bidders for the future. And just to end, I know we have a limited time. This is the promotional plan for this $21 billion pipeline that is going to be increased definitely in the future. We're going to keep talking to our future bidders, potential bidders in the companies that in the countries that we have visited, Spain, Canada, Asia, Mexico. We have new markets that we have to visit. We have a lot of interest from France in terms of water and sanitation, wastewater treatment plants, supply of water, a lot of interest from Italy in terms of energy also, the water and sanitation. And obviously Australia, we have received a lot of delegations from Australia, a lot of states that have GDPs more than any Latin American countries. And we have started making first contact with a few countries like the Scandinavian countries, Netherlands, India, and Singapore, which also has a lot of experience in terms of transportation and ports. So this is basically what we are doing. The Peruvian economy has I think it's going to improve the next year. We're going to grow at a rate of 4%, but in the future we want to return to the levels that we used to have. We're kind of spoiled. We're used to the levels of 6 to 7%, and I think ProInversion with this kind of mechanism and direction will definitely help in that regard. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Cesar. This is Doug Brunke speaking from Scottsdale. When you think about it, technology's changed so much. We have 6 speakers today, 6 different locations, and it's actually being controlled by a technology, by a company in a 7th location, and a person that's sitting in Puerto Rico, Cesar Trabanco of Global Chambers. So despite a little bit of Wi-Fi and other local issues, it seems to be going pretty well. So, and some really great information. We're going to now shift over to Lima, Peru. Oh no, we're going to go over to San Jose. Sorry, that's where we were coming from. We're going to go to Norris Steentrup, who is with the CREO agency. Do you say Agencia Creo? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Agencia Creo.
Ah, much better than I can. So you're going to be talking about the overview of the Costa Rican economy and then some details. So thank you for your participation today. Thank you for your support and your collaboration with Global Chamber.
Hi, everybody. Greetings from Costa Rica to our neighbor. Hi. And well, the things is just I would talk about Costa Rica leadership, mainly because one of the things that we do as a development, sustainable economic agency, we are just taking advantage of the leadership of Costa Rica with many things. So I would start with the thing that Costa Rica stands out in the world for this. It has a lot of biodiversity, and also it's the only country in Central America without army. So that's a huge, huge difference because we have a better index of gender equality, broad biodiversity, and also most peaceful country in Central America. We have low delinquency, and we have highest standards of quality of life. There are many agencies who check on the quality of life, so Costa Rica has the highest one. And also here there's a second favorite destination of adventure tourism, clean energy. The whole country we have the cleanest energy in Central America again, and also, well, the most like care for our environment. So one of the things, and also I have to commend the quality of life. We have the recycling culture, like really in many levels, mainly with the entrepreneurships and companies, international companies set here in Costa Rica. So one of the things then we are really seeking on, it's just a sustainability or sustainable awareness. There is higher education, highest English speakers in Central America, and one of the things then it makes a difference in Costa Rica, that's care of the environment. And not only that, just about the balance. Broad GDP is just really like increasing, but really like stable. So that's one of the things then we are really a good opportunity for invest. Also, we are one of the countries here in Central America, then we have protection laws for national parks, And also Corcovado National Park was highlighted as the best of the planet as a public national park, and also the diverse of ecosystems, including forests. I will just go for that. Forests, cloud forests, meadows, and mangroves. Even, for example, other countries, we share some in America Latina, we have some environments like that, but here in Costa Rica, all this type of environments of biodiversity is being protected. So that leadership, it's been recognized for UN and many organisms, international organisms. So for that, it makes us to have a high quality of living, not only for the resources, also for the people who we live here. So we have Cocos Island. It's just not only for diving, just UNESCO patrimony, and also we protect the waters, are home for many innumerable dolphins, sharks, rays, humpback whales, and these kind of things. It make us really competitive. So another thing is just about what is the attractive of Costa Rica. Well, we would like to know then corporate services. Here, one of the leadership that Costa Rica had is just the service. It's really high. So we have the headquarters for many call centers. We have 11 free zones. So in that, there is 70,000 employees working for call centers. Just that culture here is really high. Another, advanced manufacturing. The people here are well trained into really high skills. And the other thing is just life science. Now there's starting like being another science to be really interested in that. So what we do as an agency, well, this is Costa Rica, one part of it, but the main thing is just it has this thing, for example, the better quality of life in the continent, and also for equity, it's about the gender thing. Here in Costa Rica, there are the highest entrepreneurship from women. So that's a thing that is really helping to grow, because you can see it's not a feminism, it's humanism, but that's a great thing for us, something that we are really achieving. So what we do as an agency, well, one of the things that I was proposing for this conference is just a green economy. What is green economy? And everybody has talked about, they have talked about many details about development and growing and industry and everything. But one of the main things that we're being really different from the rest is just the first, green economy is which leads to the improvement of human well-being and social equality, while environment risk, ecological scarcity are significantly reduced. So one of the things that it comes into my head, then maybe, or many people who is making money around the world, they are not aware about the ecological impact. And we have to really look at it like it's really important, because if we don't do that, just we will not have even not only an economy, it just also we will not have life, for example. So the three aspects for green sustainability numbers. First is social thing. The important detail is the number one. We are really working on equality, poverty, and things that maybe many countries that we come from we don't have that. So the money for few are here and the other money is here and no money here. So these things we have to close the bridge and get it together. Another stuff, economy. Yes, the economy is really important, and we have to develop entrepreneurs and environmental, all three mix between each other. So one of the things and then we are really interesting and we are really focused is Rio 2020 conference. It's just sustainable development, eradication of poverty. And I would second on that everywhere in every country that you are at now. So we have to really be responsible for that and also be conscious about the distribution of natural and social and financial capital. It has to benefit the economic development and social equality and protection of the environment. There is no way that we can stay doing the same things as old times or other centuries. So that's like a pretty small resume of maybe could call like holistic approach where natural environment are valued, human welfare and economic development. That's the main thing that I want to focus on it. And one of the difference here in Costa Rica, then we are really engaged with this difference, and it's really important for me. Then look for everybody who talk about the economy and also how to invest in Costa Rica. Well, we have a crowd fundraising. Then we were looking at in the country and outside the country just to work in our projects and our programs and also investing. And one of the main programs is just environmental, sustainable construction. So anybody, any question?
We do have some questions, but we're going to reserve them for the end. We have one more speaker. So Norris, thank you very much for sharing that information. If you could just hold on, we do have some questions for you after our last speaker, Ricardo Vanea. Ricardo, we're going to go a little further south, quite a bit further south, down to Buenos Aires. I presume, Ricardo, you're in Buenos Aires today. You're going to give us a view of what's going on in Argentina. I presume since you're so well connected across the region, you'll give us a little bit of a sense of some of the other opportunities. I also wanted to mention two more things, and to remind everyone, we will have a question section, and I welcome for the locations that are out there, please step up to the mic, like here in Scottsdale or in Lima or in San Jose with your question, or type it into the question area, and we have a number of those. And one of the things I'd like to kind of respond to regarding the comment about women entrepreneurs that we just heard about in Costa Rica and the concept of humanism. We have, if you're listening to this live, our next event is Tuesday the 19th, and we're going to be talking about women in global business. It's something that's very important to Global Chamber, and I encourage all of you, men and women, to participate and have the keys to the kingdom, literally. And so it's going to take, a lot of activity by everybody to make this a better world, and not just leave it to women to fight it out. So we have some initiatives that we're rolling out next Tuesday, and if you're watching the recording of this, check out the Global Chamber website and check out the Enlightened Leaders initiative. Speaking of enlightened leaders, I don't think I know a more enlightened leader than Ricardo. Ricardo, you're extraordinary. Thank you for all that you do, not just in business, but also with the International Visitor Leadership Program and so many other things. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about Argentina.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody. I feel humble after having heard all these presentations. They were all beautiful and very interesting indeed. In terms of, concerning Argentina, we have today, I think, a very good situation with a new government. Let's remember that Argentina has around $1 billion in terms of GDP in parity purchasing power terms. Our GDP per capita is around $22,000 per year. We have all the climate diversity. All climates are present here, from a very cold Canadian south to a tropical north. As I said, from crocodiles to whales and penguins. And we have the city of Buenos Aires. Argentina, the city of Buenos Aires is very well known, but because it is very European stylish, it's very nice. And perhaps some tips, like the first branch Ford Motor Company opened in the world was in Argentina, and the first binational centers that the U.S. State Department opened abroad was in Argentina too. This is mainly a peaceful place, nor religion, neither race problems. And I would say that this is a very natural resources place. We have a huge plan of producing, taking advantage of our enormous reserves of lithium in few years. For, I think, 2030, most probably Argentina is going to explain for itself alone the 50% of the lithium supply in the world. Let's remember that lithium is very, very strategic, because all batteries that we are using right now are lithium made. And we have also, in terms of mining our traditional oil energy, we have the second reserve of shale gas and shale oil in the world. And we have a very huge opportunity in the south with the new sustainable clean energies, solar and wind, because we have the most powerful winds in the world in the south, from 70 to 170 miles per hour, the average of the winds. So they are very, very powerful. In terms of technology, we have a very well developed IT sector with competitive providers. And of course, in terms of agribusiness, we are one of the 5 top players in the world in terms of food providers. We are a top protein provider to the world, both animal and vegetable proteins, which are, proteins, that are crucial for life in the world. And just a tip, we only consume the 10% of the food we produce in Argentina per year. We are only around 40 million inhabitants, and we produce food for more than 400 million people. So we are just, we export, we have 5,000 kilometers, that is around 3,000 miles of coasts, which the richest coast in terms of fishing capacities, which is 99% exported to Asia, mainly to Japan. So we can feed and to drink water to the world. Next year we are going to have, today we have the the World Trade Organization meeting this week. It's Buenos Aires, it's a mess, but this is very important in terms of geopolitical terms. We have the leaders from all over the world talking about commerce here, and not only from the public sector, but also from the private sector. And I mean, from Alibaba to PayPal to everybody's here today. We are going to have next year, we are going to have the Youth Olympic Games. We are going to have in November of next year the top meeting of the G20. And those are, I mean, those are business opportunities. In terms of tourism, for example, we have, right now I have some hotels in the Iguazu Falls, which is a beautiful place, very well known, one of the, I don't know, 9 or 10 marvelous things of the world. And we have some hotels looking for investors at the rate of 15 US million each, including casinos. So that's a good business to do right now, for example. And I would like to mention the infrastructure in highways, urban development, connections within the cities, huge constructions projects that could be very interesting for foreign investors. In the education realm, we have a very interesting situation because we have thousands and thousands of foreigners studying here. Mainly the first student provider is Peru, the second is Brazil, then Colombia, Bolivia, US, Spain, Italy, Russia, Costa Rica, Venezuela, Haiti, and Asia. And those are, I mean, those are guys who are here and they need insurances, they need services, they need to, well, to be connected with their countries. Paraguay has, only in Argentina, Paraguay has around 5 or 6 million inhabitants, and they have 1 million in Argentina. So you can imagine the big business to deal with the Paraguayan community here, and so on for the next. I mean, we have a lot of Peruvians, so Peruvians companies are looking for connecting with them and selling them Peruvian products, etc., that or Peruvian things. I mean, that's a good thing. They have I mean, Peruvians and Bolivians, they own radios here, they own media here. So they are very big communities, very well established and very well integrated to Argentina. Peru is a brother country from our very, very beginning. So they are very well integrated here. And the other thing is healthcare. Healthcare, we are very competitive. We have hospitals, healthcare centers, diagnostic imaging centers, emergency departments, and with 2 Nobel Prizes in medicine, 1 Nobel Prize in chemistry, and some other Nobel Prizes in some other issues, Argentina is very well positioned as a provider for high complexity healthcare. We would like to emphasize that Argentina's reputation is well renowned. Our physicians having made significant contributions to advances in procedures such blood transfusion, bypass, artificial heart, stents. They are all Argentine creations. And our healthcare infrastructure and technologies are among the best in the world, thanks to the extensive investment in technological innovation, cutting-edge equipment, and most advanced surgical instruments. enable our professionals to make accurate diagnosis and performing delicate surgeries in high complexity. And we have universities, for example, Argentina has more than 20 public and private medical schools providing first-class academic training and enrolling students from across Latin America and the rest of the world. So we are extremely competitive to provide medical service from Argentina in high complexity especially. I know that Cesar Trabanco is in a hurry because we have to pass through to the questions, but I had to be very, very short. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the first question, and then I encourage people here in Scottsdale or at your local locations to step up to the mic, and Bob, I'll ask yours for you. I also want to mention, Ricardo mentions healthcare. He recently actually was here at our headquarters in Scottsdale and brought a large member, healthcare member from Argentina to the U.S., where we were able to make at least a half a dozen meetings happen, both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And that's how Global Chamber works, is you're a member, you want to get connected to opportunities, and there's nobody better than Ricardo, and brought, CEO founder of an amazing healthcare company who needed some connections in the U.S., and we were able to facilitate that. That's what we do. There's nobody better than Global Chamber. So thank you, Ricardo, for your vision around that. I'd like to go all the way back to our first section on Mexico, and the first question from Bob here in Scottsdale is kind of built around a lot of the noise that's going on between the U.S. and Mexico. From the U.S. side, at least from one guy, tends to be pretty prickly. And yet, when you look at what's happening with businesses between the U.S. and Mexico, there's a lot of, there's a mega region, there's a lot of activity. The activity continues to seem to progress without stopping. What would you suggest companies do that are either U.S. companies looking to expand it to Mexico and beyond, or Mexican companies into the U.S., given kind of a little bit of an uncertain future around trade?
So I'll make an analogy to when I moved to Arizona. And I'm a cold weather person, moving to Arizona, extreme summers. The best thing I could do was stop watching the news. I just assumed it's hot, I got to deal with it, it's a fact, and just live on. I would make that recommendation in this type of situation right now. Just stop listening to the news. Look at the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario that can happen is NAFTA doesn't get renewed. What happens then? We go into WTO rules, World Trade Organization. Probably what you'll end up having is some duties around 2 to 3%, which will get buried on the cost of the product. It's not that big of a deal. I think it's more of a politicized deal. Believe me, I'm all for NAFTA, but I've been wrong with our current president in all the stages from pre-candidate to presidency. I've been wrong in predicting everything. If you ask me, I would say NAFTA won't get canceled. But I've been wrong in the past, and I'm tired of sticking my foot in my mouth. But to me, it's like business finds the best way of doing business, and it will continue to do business. The fact that I say that the U.S. and Mexico are not neighbors, they're roommates. You can't move. So it's something that will continue to happen. Business will continue to happen. They'll find ways of either finding economic incentives or certain economic zones, but business will continue. There's no other way about it. I would be more concerned about regulations like the tax code that's now in place. I think that will hinder probably, and I say it concerned from a Mexico perspective, not from a U.S. perspective. I think the U.S. is doing a good job. The tax reform needs to get changed somehow. I don't know if the plan that's in place right now is the best one or not, but we do need to reform that. From a Mexico perspective, I think that will affect future foreign investment into the country if all of a sudden you have a 10 to a 12% drop in your corporate taxing within the U.S. So I would keep an eye a little bit more on that than all the rhetoric that's going on around the negotiations of NAFTA.
So the next question is a little bit double-tiered, and I'll ask you again, David. What opportunities are there for Latin American companies in Mexico? And I'd also like to, as a double part of this question, go back to Cesar after David answers that part of it. Is you're involved with TPP still? You're one of the now TPP 11 with the U.S. out for the time being, until we get somebody else in to the White House. How do you see TPP going forward, and how will that transpire over 2018? So first, the question for Mexico, what about the rest of Latin America? Where do you see the synergies there and opportunities?
So I think that the opportunities that we have in Latin America is look at what happened with NAFTA with North America. And I think that part of the political talk that's happening, it's that people are going to products that are made in Mexico or products that are made in the USA and getting that pride of having your product made in your country. That is old school. I don't believe there's a single product nowadays that's made in just one country. I believe that there's North American made products. There is no Mexico made product. Every car that comes into the US, 40% of its parts came from the US originally. So if it's built in Mexico, 40% comes from the US. That relationship of the US with China is less than 1%. 40% versus less than 1%. And I think that's where the opportunity in Latin America is. We have to be more integrated into our channels of supply. They were just talking about the great mining resources of lithium in Argentina. They have the resources, but they're not manufacturing the batteries there. We can do it within that Latin America region and provide a value added to a raw product and become a little bit more integrated in manufacturing. And I think that's where the opportunities relay in Latin America, really going after what happened in the last 25 years in North America.
Great. Thank you, David. Cesar, mining obviously big in Peru. TPP has the potential to open up opportunities for companies all across the Americas and the world. Could you talk a little bit about where you see those in 2018 out of TPP?
I see better wins for next year. Actually, the mining project is just one. We have the vast amount of our projects are in other sectors. As I said, we have a $21 million pipeline until 2020. This doesn't include new mandates that we're going to have in the next months and in the next years. We're always keen on improving our processes. As I said, we are going to have IO, Infrastructure Ontario, probably the best PPP agency in the world, coming very soon to help us continue improving our processes. We're already made some improvement. We changed our manual for hiring transaction advisors. We're trying to improve that. We already hired Goldman Sachs, as I said, for the Michiquillay project, which is a copper and molybdenum project. This is the first time in a lot of years that we hire a tier 1 bulge bracket transaction advisor. So I see good wins. We need obviously to keep improving. I'm always transparent with investors, having better predictability, planning for the future, and keep originating new projects. I think we have a huge opportunity, a huge gap. We offer the world one of the best macro stability, the same treatment for foreign investors that we give to national investors. So we have to keep improving and keep originating more projects.
Very good. We have about 10 more minutes, so if anybody has questions, please walk up and ask your question. In the meantime, now back to Costa Rica, and we've got to Norris regarding sustainability. You talked a lot about the opportunities there, the mentality of within the region there. Can you talk a little bit about maybe specific sustainability opportunities for investors or companies coming in, whether it's from any of the countries in the Americas or around the world. Could you talk a little bit more about where should people be investing? You mentioned about recycling. It's already kind of along the way, but where are some of the future opportunities?
Yeah, one of the things, and then here I have one of my associates at the agency, and we are really seeking on construction. One of the sustainability has to do with, as the thing that you said, it's just about equity is a pretty important thing we're seeking in that, and also as infrastructure and sustainable construction. So, and also consulting, one of the things that we are really seeking on, looking for investments, is just in that. Because as I said before, everybody is really aware about creating money and making business, but we are not so taking the chance to check on the impact of our activities or our projects. And if you do that, sometimes it's only because the government asks you to do that or force you to do that, but not exactly because you're conscious of that. So here we have different programs, and also we have our own NGO. So one of the things that we're seeking is just to be recognized by UN, and also just to increase the impact on our projects. We have to start like really doing a huge difference in the headquarters here in Costa Rica, but we're really looking forward to keep going in the rest of Latin America and the rest of the countries that could need this type of services of be aware about the impact. And also we really try to promote, to think on green numbers. The importance of do not take an eye only in money. Please keep an eye on the environmental and the social thing, because mainly in Latin America, from Mexico to Argentina, the distance between power people with a lot of money and people without money, it's really high difference. So we have to be really compromising that, and that's the thing that I really want to everybody think, and also that just to plan part of their every day, just how to create a better legacy for their own enterprises and their own projects.
Very good. Thank you very much. We are going to go back to Panama for actually 3 questions, and then that may end up wrapping us up. So the first question is from Melissa Roberts here in Scottsdale, who's too shy to ask it on camera, but she has given me the text on her phone here, and so I'll ask that one first. Panama is seeing growth in blockchain technology, and I think all of us, in global business, or blockchain is a huge initiative. Are other governments in the region supporting legislation that will enable international collaboration in that field? And again, that's from Melissa Roberts. Thank you, Melissa. There's your phone.
Well, like everywhere, these new technologies, including the blockchain technology, it's taking over. And you know that technology is not like subject to the bureaucracy of traditional ways of making money and or banking. I would say yes, the blockchain technology is taking slowly, but it's taking over certain areas in Panama. There have been created a couple of organizations, 1 or 2 that I can remember, that have started preparing some educational forums regarding the use of, for example, of the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And certain clients have started requesting us that we start accepting some form of payment based on those currencies. So far, it's not been a great issue for the government to regulate it. but we believe that that is something that's going to be happening sooner than later, because our financial system, which is one of the bases and one of the greatest percentages of our GDP, I mean, it's going to have to adapt to these new forms of making money and making transactions globally.
Very good. I'm sure in 2018 you'll be seeing some information about blockchain from Global Chamber. As recently we had the CEO of Sweetbridge, Scott Nelson, talking about it. We'll have, I'm sure, another event coming up to stay on top of that. That brings us to the end of our conversation, unless there's a question from anyone. If you do have some questions that we didn't get to, feel free to send it to info@globalchamber.org, and we'll make sure that we address it one-on-one with you, and maybe even include it in the presentation of this. We'll summarize all of this, probably include the video in a wrap-up over sometime in the next week. I also want to remind you about Enlightened Leaders, which is about establishing you as a leader with global mindset, with an understanding and path forward regarding gender balance, and also the understanding that both gender balance, diversity, and global mindset, all three of those things make you a more successful company. And so how can you as a leader implement that either for your own company or within the organization that you're in? Thank you, everybody. I can't thank you enough. Great conversation, great information. Thanks for your support of Global Chamber, both speakers and everybody who's attended from around the world today. Thank you very much.